As promised, I'm going to show you how my sweet potato harvest went this year with my woven ground cover. So if you remember last year, I had found actually a variety of sweet potato that was from Western Canada that was actually a variety proven to do well in Atlantic Canada where our summers are quite short. So last year I had planted some of these sweet potatoes and I was actually really happy with how they turned out. Now they weren't huge, but they did really well. And so this year I decided I was going to try something a little bit different. I wanted to try to see if I put down a woven ground cover, if the sweet potatoes would do better because it would keep the ground nice and warm, and as well it would allow me to keep the sweet potatoes outside without harvesting a little bit longer. Another thing that I also did towards the end of the season, right when it was starting to cool down and I was afraid that I was going to get some frost, is I also covered the sweet potatoes with a really thin cloth that would help to keep them in the ground longer, and if there was some frost that they wouldn't get on the vines and kind of damage the vines and the sweet potatoes. So that worked out great. I was able to actually leave my sweet potatoes in the ground probably a couple of weeks longer than I usually would have. So when it came time to harvest, I started by cutting back the vines to make the ground cover easier to remove because I wouldn't have to be pulling out the vines. So I cut off all the vines to start with. And I was a little concerned because I was by myself that I may have a little bit of trouble peeling back the ground cover, but really it went really well. I didn't have to remove the metal staples that I have in. I was able to just peel it back with the staples on, which I removed afterwards. But I was a little bit in a rush that day, so I didn't have time to do all that before harvesting. So it was actually really easy to just peel it back by myself. So that went really well. Once I had the ground cover removed and peeled back, then I started digging through the ground. It's a little easier with a shovel. I always do it with a shovel, but you got to really be careful to give your potatoes like a wide space. It's just really to loosen the earth, but you don't want to pull on them because they break easily. So I always use a shovel to kind of dig into the ground and to loosen the soil and then dig them out. I was really surprised, pleasantly surprised to see how big some of these sweet potatoes got. Like, I have never gotten sweet potatoes quite that size. So let me show you how the harvest ended up. Look at this. It's amazing. And this. Another really nice big one. Look at that. Wow, this one's a nice grab. Look at that. Look at these. All nice potatoes. Look at the size of these two potatoes. It's incredible. Look at that. It's great. Look at this and tell me that it's not amazing. Like, look at the size of my hand and look at the size of this potato. It's incredible. I want to give you a look at this year's harvest. Look at the size of these sweet potatoes. Like, this is one potato. The smaller ones are on that end. The larger ones are here. I mean, look at how big they came. I'm just like, I'm sure you can tell in my voice. I'm a little excited. So I would say that this is a success. The variety of these sweet potatoes that I use is a company out west in Canada that I had originally ordered my slips from. I'll link the description below to their website. This variety is called Radiance. So I would say that the ground cover and then the frost cover that I put over was a huge success. So I find that these potatoes are absolutely beautiful. I have ended up with about 15 potatoes that are over a pound, and some of these are like a pound and a half. And I have about 15 at least of these. So I want to say that there's at least 20 pounds of these really large potatoes. And then For the other ones that I would say are more of a average to maybe a little bit smaller than average size potato, I have about 30 of these, which are maybe somewhere around half a pound. So maybe another 15 pounds of these smaller potatoes. And then I have the really small ones that really just are the root that just got a little bit bigger and so kind of negligible. They've already been cured. I've cured them in a hot room at 85 degrees for about 10 to 14 days. But something else that I wanted to show you were the sweet potatoes that I had actually planted in my greenhouse. Now, there's not a whole lot. I had only 4 plants, and yesterday decided to eat these. I cooked 4 that were probably about this size, or maybe more like this size, a little bit bigger, from my greenhouse. Now, when I planted the sweet potatoes in the greenhouse, I planted them at least a month after the ones that I planted outside. The growing season for the ones in the greenhouse wasn't quite as long, but I was able to leave them a little bit later than the ones in the garden. One thing that I really found interesting that I realized from watching other homesteaders, and that I had absolutely no idea, even if I've been doing sweet potatoes for a few years at least, I suddenly saw that you're supposed to be cutting back the vine. I had no idea. So what I've been reading up, and once you find that and then you really start to look for it, then I was able to see that actually you shouldn't let the sweet potato vine grow more than 4 feet, and it makes so much sense. So because it takes away from the root that you want and puts all the energy into the vine. Like, it just makes so much sense. So I'm actually excited once again for another sweet potato season next year, because I'm going to be cutting back on those vines and seeing if my sweet potatoes come out even better, and maybe I'll get less of the smaller ones and more of the bigger ones. So something again to look forward to next planting season. I do hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy this content. If you do, give it a big thumbs up. Be sure to check back again soon to see what other content I'll have coming up.